We welcome you here. This is fantastic. As you know, we're going to be talking about questions and talking about kind of a coach approach to our facilitation. So our hope and prayer is that this will be really encouraging and beneficial, whether you know what in your groups, but maybe even in your parenting, and who knows where this can go. But we hope that it's really helpful for you. So questions. Let's start with a little icebreaker here. I want you to go to the chat window and answer this question. What's the best question you were ever asked? What is the best question you were ever asked? Throw it in the chat window. Will you marry me? Renee, that's awesome. Tiffany, what do you want to eat? Okay, this one. What did Jesus feel when he saw you lead in your sweet spot? Okay, Darcy, you got to tell us a little bit about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, just I was in kind of a mentoring conversation and just expressing kind of the doubts, or when I led, I saw all my imperfections, all the mistakes that I'd made over that course of that 1 hour session. And the person who was mentoring me say, "So what did Jesus feel when he saw you do that?"
Wow.
And
Powerful.
it was just it just took me aback, because I realized that I was looking at myself in I had the totally wrong perspective.
Right. So good.
And
okay.
So it was challenging.
Taryn, do you actually want to invest your time in this? If you're willing, tell us a little bit more.
Well, for me, sorry, I have family going on, but
it's okay.
For me, time's a big thing. So to be able to have someone say that, and it kind of put that light bulb off, like, I don't have to spend my time here. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't have to be here. This might just go better if I'm not here, and I could be used better somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But sometimes you need that light bulb. You're like, I don't have to do this.
Yeah. So good. Anne Yank, what are you best at? Tell us a little more.
I'm not sure. There are a few things, but I had done like quite a few personality evaluation and strength evaluation, and this was just another one. I had just finished a tilt one with John Kaplan, and I'm like all over the place. And he says, but you need to focus. You need to know exactly what you're good at, and this is where you're gonna have to spend your time, not all over this and this and that. So make sure that you are investing your time and your efforts where you really have your greatest strengths. Yeah. So what are you best at was a very good question for me. It got me thinking.
So good. Yeah. Okay, our last one, Geralt. Would you like to learn together? Someone asked you that. Tell us more.
I like to have a mentor in life, and all ages of ladies, that we learn from each other so well. And just doing something by yourself, it's overwhelming, but when you do it together with the girlfriend, it just an encouragement and accountability as well.
So good. So I love your responses, and I even love, hey, do you want me to cook dinner? Like, hello, what a wonderful question to be asked. But it just shows how powerful one question can be. I know in my life, someone's asked one question a certain way, and suddenly it's my mind, like someone said, a light bulb goes off, and then suddenly everything changes in that moment. Now, Darcy, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Renee, did you say yes? Or was it just a good question?
I said yes.
Oh, okay, just checking to that. Will you marry me one? Because it was like, maybe there's a story there that we don't know.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
awesome. So good. So questions, that's what we're going to be talking about, is our call focus today. And we're going to be covering some other things and making sure that you have the opportunity to ask questions as we go into the fall and that kind of thing. But I want to start with some exciting sort of announcements kind of thing, because I'm super pumped. So I don't know if you know this, but we have been working on what we've called a mini refresh of the identity course. This has been mostly the project of Fiona Keene, who's one of our trainers. She's on this call, so if you get a chance to thank her. But what we did was we went through the course with a fine-tooth comb, and we looked at it all, because we take our feedback really seriously. And some of the feedback we got was simple things like typos, but things deeper. Like one of the things that we discovered was that the identity course didn't always feel inclusive of everyone, because it was originally written way back in the day by me and my partner in crime at that time. Her name was Julie. And we were both sort of stay-at-home moms, married, had that perspective. And so, you write out of your own experiences. And so we got this feedback of like, can we open this up so that others that maybe they're not married, like from other perspectives, will feel that they can see themselves in that. And so I'm really thrilled to tell you that this has all been launched as of this morning. And so I want to encourage you to get in the course. Again, your link that you always use, that's what you'll use to get into the course. But there's some really cool stuff there. For example, I'm showing the screen of the new Blessed Alliance video, less marriage focused and more team focused. So that's in there. There are new workbooks. We went through and really refined questions. We're talking about questions and how questions can change everything at times. Some of our questions just were, we even had some closed questions in there. Some of the questions just weren't as effective as they could be. And so we took a look at that just to really further improve it. Now, I look at all of this is kind of like a living document. And so there might be some things you still go, Leanne, there's a typo still. We want to hear that because we want to improve it. Another thing that you'll find in the new, I'm not even going to call it the new format, because there's nothing in it that's going to surprise you. But one thing that we added was what we're calling the dig deeper sections. So if you remember, at the end, we had further resources. We now, after every section, have a dig deeper section. So the power of God's, or the power of women released. There's books you can check out, articles, teachings, websites, statements, a summary when it comes to theology and that kind of thing. If you go down to dig deeper of the power of God's story in your life, you're going to find other resources. So that's going to help, like not every session kind of hits people at the same way, but there's some sessions that like, oh, I want to go deeper into this. It's right there, so they don't have to go digging for it. You'll also find that in session 7, which is, I could move this over a little bit so you can see it better. But session 7 has the resources for facilitating your own course. And if you're considering a course this fall, I would encourage you to go back in here, go through all of this. There's so much information here. We are always available for questions, but you might find them here quicker. And if you can't find your answers here, certainly reach out. So some of the things that are in here are like past ZOE Facilitator Call videos. So every, no, not there, right here. So every call we've ever done, we throw in here. And so it's like, oh, starting strong. Maybe you're starting early October. Have a listen here. We just really want you to do well. So we're really excited about that. I thought, because my first leading strength is activator, which means let's do it now and let's not look back, which is awesome. But I don't always have a realistic understanding of how long something takes in order to do it really well. And so, which is why we work in team. Anyway, it was a lot of work and I'm super proud of our team for putting it together. And I think you're going to be really thrilled with what you find there. Is there any questions about that? No? Ooh, I must have explained it really, really well. Okay. So let's go to our call focus. Questions. We talk a lot about how facilitating is different than teaching. You know, when we teach, we are the experts. We're the ones with the answers, and there's absolutely a place for teaching. And, you know, I have a heart of a teacher, and, you know, I'm sort of a recovering expert. Like I like to have knowledge of subjects and all that kind of thing. But in the ZOE courses, we take the approach of facilitating, where we aren't the experts, though we certainly bring ourselves, our knowledge, and our experiences to the conversation. But our role is actually to draw people out and help them to discover for themselves what God is saying and what He is showing them. And so it takes a great deal of discipline to almost like pull ourselves back and instead draw people out. So the major tool we use to facilitate is questions. And all throughout our courses, we've embedded questions to help facilitators. So in our mini refresh, you're going to notice that the questions are stronger. But that's the approach we take. Now, the philosopher Thomas Kuhn says the answers you get depend on the questions you ask. So there's two basic types of questions. You probably know this, but it's good sometimes to go over those foundational things. But there are what are known as closed questions. A closed question is like, do you agree with the author of this article? Or, and this was in the course, bless our hearts, do you want to participate in God's mission? I mean, 99.9% of us would say yes. So these questions invite kind of like a one-word answer, such as yes or no. And they can be good for like icebreakers or that kind of thing, but they don't lead anywhere. Now, open questions are different. They require a little more thought and generally encourage wider discussion and elaboration. They can't be answered with a simple yes or no answer. So for example, what part of the article challenged you? Or what do you think stops you from participating in God's mission? Those questions invite reflection and critical thinking. So as facilitators, we want to spend the most time as possible in the open question zone. Now, when you have asked a question, consider digging deeper. And Darcy, I have to say, he's my husband, but I have to say he's really, really good at this. He always says, just ask one more question. So always consider follow-up questions such as, what makes you say that? Or what if that wasn't true? It continues to open up things in the conversation. So let's just say you're talking with a participant who's disappointed in their spiritual gifts results. And it happens a lot, particularly if people like have the hospitality gift or whatever, right? They're like, wah, you know, they don't like it. So you could ask, what makes that disappointing for you? And you may unearth a bias that they see spiritual gifts in a hierarchy. And then follow up with questions that dig into that a little more, can give you insight, and you may feel led to kind of challenge that lie. Don't be afraid of silence. You know, people always kind of feel this tension that somehow they need to fill the holes in conversation, but start getting comfortable with asking a question, letting it linger there a little bit, wait for a response. And then here's the thing, that's not like dead time. There's good stuff that's happening in the silence, and often the silence will then bring out the critical bit of information that you seek. So 2 kinds of questions. Ask that second question to lead from that initial question, and don't be afraid of the silence. Any thoughts on that? Anybody?
I think the example that you gave of people struggling with the spiritual gifts results, the other area that I've seen lots of struggle in is people will, if they have prophecy or one of the supernatural gifts, sometimes they will not want that gift, or they'll associate it with maybe a televangelist or something like that. And so that's also interesting to ask questions. What's underneath your dislike of that gift? It's just fascinating. Have you ever seen that happen where it was a positive gift in action?
So good. One of my favorites is when women get the pastoral gift and they don't know what to do with it, because they have seen that gift, like you said, not as an evangelist, but like as the office of pastor. And so you can start to ask people questions, and suddenly it unearths things. It's actually fun. It's almost like going on a treasure hunt. Anyone else? Anne?
Yes, on not being afraid of the silence. Sometimes we wonder, but for how long should I wait for someone to try an answer? And we, over some reading, I don't know if you have it in the notes in the course, but 8 seconds. We should wait until the 8, and often it's at second 6 or 7. That's when an answer will just come up. So don't be afraid to wait 8 seconds.
So let's just see what 8 seconds feels like. Oh, I was going to do 8 minutes. That would have had us here for a while. So let me just say, on your mark, get set. Wow. It went quick, but then it was very long, wasn't it? Anyone else? Reflections on what you just heard? Joanne.
I'm just finding this super fascinating, but it does make me think of a friend of mine who actually needs some prep time to think about and chew on the question before she answers, like not 8 seconds, like 8 days kind of thing. And so for people like that who are just really deep thinkers and they really need time to mull, do you have a kind of a thought or a perspective? Because they just don't do that part in the moment super well at how to sort of ask questions that is still leading, knowing though that they need some time to think. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but do you have any thoughts on that?
I think you give them the time. I mean, in the context of the identity course, hopefully they've already thought about things, like things aren't going to be like sprung on them, you know, where we take them through a bit of a path. So they hopefully have reflected deeply on it. But then if in a follow-up question, in a conversation, and they're stumped, you know, challenge them. Hey, this week, consider really thinking about that. And as facilitators, here's the thing. We can't be more invested in their growth than they are. I've really learned that. Sometimes I want something for someone so bad, but they have to want it for themselves. And so I wouldn't assign homework, but I would challenge them. I want you to think about this. What do you think? And then, you know, circle around next week if you want to, or what have you, but to really leave it with them. Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, well, let's try. We are going to, oh, Darcy.
Ginger had a question, I think.
I didn't see that. Thank you, Darcy.
Oh, I was just going to comment actually that I really like how you mentioned the follow-up question or the probing question, the asking one more question. That's something that I've noticed others do well that I know I need to work on, like to think of another question to follow up to go a little bit deeper with the person.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, Fiona had a good tip here. In a small group, perhaps allow them to share last. So Joanne, if someone is, and you know this about them, then allow them to share last so they have time to kind of mull it over. It's great. Okay, we on our call have a couple of professional coaches, as in they get paid to ask people questions, which I just think is fantastic. We have here Karina DeGuire, who's one of our trainers, and we have Darcy McAllister, who I'm married to. And we thought it would be really good for them to do a bit of a coaching demonstration. And as they are demonstrating, asking one another questions, they're going to coach each other. So I think Karina is going to go first and coach Darcy, and then Darcy will go first and coach Karina. I want you to jot down the questions they ask. That's our only job. Jot those questions down and just listen to what's going on there. And then from there, we're going to go into smaller groups and sort of digest. Now, Christine is here. Christine, did you want to jump on in this, or do you want Darcy? It's up to you.
I'm happy to. I apologize. I
Okay.
misunderstood the time.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. New thing happening here. Okay, so Christine is going to be our girl that we're coaching. So we'll start with Karina and then we'll start with Darcy. Both of you have 4 minutes, and you know I love my timer. You know it's my best friend. And so
before we start, Leanne, we should give Karina an extra minute to set the stage with Christine. Yeah, otherwise that's like that. I get all the gravy, and she just
you get all the good questions.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so first of all, I introduced Christine to you. Christine was a recent grad of the ID course. She's in Ontario. Fabulous leader, woman, awesome. She was in my group, and I'm just a big fan. And yeah, so she has agreed to be coached. And so all we're going to do is write down the questions that she's asked. And Christine, we want to coach you on something out of the identity course. Maybe it's something that you learned, something that, you know, I think you're thinking about facilitating a course this fall, so it could be based on that. But Karina is going to get you started, and then Darcy is going to follow up. Does that sound good? Okay. I'm going to put it on speaker mode. And we will all mute ourselves. Okay.
Except Christine, you can unmute yourself. So Christine, give me a feel for something you would like to spend some time thinking a little deeper about.
Can you give a bit more to that?
Is there something that you learned in the identity course that you want to explore a little bit more, or is there something about facilitating a identity course that you want to get a better dig deeper on.
Yeah, I think what we learned in that course, I knew deep down to be true, and it was kind of a refresher. It was encouraging for me to see it all laid out and all mapped out in one specific course. But I think if I were facilitating, what I would want to know how to really help women understand it fully. And I know, Leanne, I like that sentence that you said about we can't want it more for someone else than we want it for them. They have to want it more than we do. But how do we really help them understand this so that it becomes transformational?
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is you really want to make sure that your facilitation skills are creating or supporting a transformational experience for people. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So when you think about your experience in the identity course, what about that was transformational for you?
So I really enjoyed that when we did the gift assessment, both spiritual gifts and the Strengths Finder, that it reflected what I knew to be true, but it solidified something in me. So I gained this extra confidence in those skills. So I already had a skill set, but when I thought about it, did the assessments, I began to see more ways that it was actually happening in my life. And then at work or at church in meetings, I came with an extra confidence that I probably didn't have before in that area, because I understood actually this is part of who I am and what I bring. So for me, it launched me into a new level of confidence in those skills and in who I was in Christ and who he made me to be. And that was okay.
And was there something specific that the facilitators did or shared in your dialogue that solidified that for you?
Yeah, they were excited about it. They made it seem like it wasn't normal or ordinary. You know, for each unique gift, their excitement and support of those strengths was, I don't know, confirmation for me that I had something different, unique, and something unique to offer.
Right. So as a future facilitator, how might you leverage that kind of approach?
Yeah, it was
to make it your own.
Yeah, it was encouraging and noted in my own life. So the encouragement, I did take note of that, and I thought, you know, if I'm helping others, I really want to pull out that same level of excitement and encouragement for other people, whatever their gifts are, to let them know that it's unique and special, and it has it needs to be explored with confidence.
Right. And so is that something that is natural for you, or something that you're going to have to work at?
I think it's something I'd probably have to work at to basically, I think the excitement part is good, but I wouldn't always be able to relate to the different skills and gifts. So someone who's different, you know, I'm not very, I don't have the gift of hospitality or maybe service. And so if I were to see different kinds of gifts in people, I wouldn't always be able to relate how they would use them or encourage, you know, to brainstorm ways they could use them or maximize them. So that would be a challenge.
Right. So what are some action steps you could take to familiarize yourself with those things that you're not as familiar with?
I'm not entirely sure, but the knowledge base that they're all obviously gifts and valuable, I think that's a good starting point. So just being able to be encouraging others to find ways that they can use them, and maybe put it on them a little bit to say like what ways they could see themselves using that.
Right. So I'm hearing you say I could ask questions to help create that encouragement. So it's just interesting to me, we're talking about questions, and that actually might be a way to create that excitement and make it more intrinsic for them, right? Because you don't know what, where might you get some guidance on other resources available to you?
Yeah, so I think all of the spiritual gift, I'm just using that as an example, the spiritual gift assessment comes with little descriptions, and I'm not sure that these strength finders the descriptions are readily available unless you know, that becomes your gift. But just reading up on those and getting a little bit of an understanding would help give some context probably to those strengths and those gifts.
Okay, thank you. Now keep going, Darcy.
Thank you, Mrs. McAllister. Christine, I do know that Value Village has those Strength Finder books often,
Okay.
so you can look there. How did that transformation happen for others in your course that you were able to observe?
I think it happened at different parts. So some people expressed really significant transformation at different parts. For example, the timeline was really meaningful to some people. And as they were sharing, they were expressing that. They were expressing that that was meaningful to them and really made them think, and they wanted to spend more time on it. Others, yeah, the very beginning actually, where I think the lesson is, you know, based in Genesis, where we learn about being an Ezer, and that was really significant for some people. Yeah, so I think each different stage meant different things to different women. What
did your facilitator do in those other moments? Was it different than what happened with you? Were there any things that you could learn from what your facilitators did with others?
Yeah, each time I think we had a chance to share. Anytime you know, it was obvious that someone was experiencing kind of a transformational moment, they leaned into that. They took time and really dug into that with that individual, and you could see that conversation play out.
That's interesting. So I've heard you mention kind of excitement. You know, as you talked with Karina, I heard you mention additional questions, time, leaning in. Were there any other things that you noticed your facilitators doing that you went, oh, that really helped, that you could use?
So I do recall a lot of summarization. So and just affirmation. So if someone was expressing something, there was a kind of a summary statement, and then an encouragement in that, and affirming kind of whatever was going on, not necessarily affirming what they're saying, but affirming that something's going on, and maybe asking questions to follow up. What could a next step be, or why was that significant for you? To pull out people to really get the most out of it.
Now, you used the word transformation. That's a longing to have happen, and that happened for you. What was happening spiritually in you that at that moment? Were there any pieces that you could pick up spiritually?
Well, it kind of all felt spiritual because we're talking about how God made us and what He's called us to. So it was a really neat blend of, we're not separating, your calling and your work from who God made you to be and who you are spiritually. So actually, we had I remember, someone said, oh, well, this is my goal for work, but that's different. And, I think it was Leanne who said, no, this is all the goal. This is all part of it. And that's spiritual too, like who God's called you to be. You use your gifts in all different aspects.
So just as Leanne ends that, I'll say that would be one more piece I think that you could add, is not to separate the spiritual from the
Vocation
from the secular. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, you learned a lot.
Thanks, Leanne. Tiffany.
Leanne, just before you jump in, Christine, if you could just wrap up for us by telling us what are the kind of big takeaways from your time with Darcy and I?
It's actually difficult to answer some of these questions. They're really deep, and you're thinking about a whole experience. But yeah, it's making me think deeply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good.
Thank you. Thanks for being, honest with us in front of a group of potential strangers. Like that's risky. So I just want to affirm that.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you from everybody.
Very welcome.
It's a vulnerable thing to just kind of share like that in a forum. Now a typical, coaching session would be about 30 to 40 minutes where you would kind of wrap up or whatever, but I just wanted us to think in terms of questions and sitting with that. So good. Okay, so now you're going to be teleported to some rooms where I will be, Darcy and Karina, and we're going to lead those rooms.
I enjoyed that discussion. That was really rich, and so I'd love to get a bit of a report from each of the groups. Maybe there was a specific question that you came up with, or just something that really stood out to you. I know our group was really wrestling. What do we say? What do we report back? And Ginger has a home run of a statement that I'll let her share from our group. So Ginger, if you want to share just for a moment about what we kind of came up with at the end of our discussion time.
Okay, well, we were discussing how, first we were talking about what are linear type questions, and we realized there's different types of linear questions that can go from, it can be this way, deep levels or same subject lines. But we discussed the question that was built upon through the series of questions that were asked was about how can you help others to have that same transformational experience that you had. That was at the beginning of the series of questions. And because of the fact that these lines of questions were based on her experience, that it will be helpful for her and her leadership skills, because it'll be based on not just you need to learn this, that, and the other thing. It's based on her experience, so she'll remember more from what the series of questions were about, based on the fact that it's the experience factor for her will help her to remember. It'll have a more deep impact on her leadership development. So that's what we came up with.
It was neat to just kind of have that, even that realization within our group about the impact of the depth of the questions and the personal experience. So Thank you, Christine and Karina, for providing that moment for our group. We lingered in that part for quite a while. Now, Karina, who from your group is going to share just a nugget or two that really stood out to you?
Well, I failed in my facilitation and we didn't decide that, but give me 1 second. I just want to say that one of the things that I thought you did, Darcy, was when I was chatting with Christine, we were talking about her personal experience, and then you transitioned it to what she observed in others. And I thought that was brilliant because it was not just what she experienced, but then it was what she observed. And I thought that sandwich was really good.
Yeah.
Is there somebody in the group?
Fun.
Yeah. Tiffany, I really appreciated what you were talking about at the end. Maybe, is there somebody in the group who wants to jump in, or is that maybe we should focus in on that little nugget?
I'm good with Tiffany's
All
nugget.
right, Tiffany.
Sure. I think, I don't know who initially said it, but somebody said like have a questions list. And so then I sort of elaborated on the fact that we're not all coaches and we're not all gifted in that way. And so I am constantly taking what questions I'm hearing, things other people are doing, and especially here in this coaching session, like writing down those questions that you hear. Oh, that's a good question. I want to use that one. I heard Leanne do that one. And actually have them in front of you and not be ashamed to use them, because they actually strengthen maybe a gifting that you're not as strong in, and gives you confidence to move forward in your facilitation ability with the people that you have.
Can I interject here? Because Tiffany is saying, I'm not a coach, I'm not gifted in this. I've trained with Tiffany, and you mind sometimes with the questions you come up with, and I write them down and steal from them. It's stealing, right? But like, no, we're not all professional coaches, and yet we can do this. And I love the idea of a question list. And so what you'll see in the chat right here is a questions list that we put together for you. And it's actually going to be embedded right into the course, but I encourage you to get that now so that you have it in front of you. But just don't sell yourself short, because yeah, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
I think someone said it, I find questions hard. And so that is a strategy. And even in coaching, I remember doing our training, they had like a package of questions that they would sell, as part of your training package. So even the professionals use question lists, is what I'm getting at.
So we Tiff, you stole our thunder. I was going to have this big reveal and kind of just like present it as kind of the takeaway from today, but you stole it. You stole it with your great observation and insight. So thank you. So I think there was one more group. Leanne, your group. What was a nugget that came from your group?
I'll let Anne speak to it.
All right, so I noted 3 or 4, and one of them was, what is it about this spiritual gift that scares you when you're actually walking in this already? So that was a very good question. And another one was, do you think of another gift that you think you should be on the list but doesn't show up here? So that one also could send a participant, into deep thinking, like, okay, I'm not sure I like these. All right, well then which one do you think should be on the list? So that's interesting. Leanne had that question that she likes, which is just tell me more. So when you want to dig deeper, it's an easy one. It can be asked of almost any, in any context, tell me more. And the last one was just, can you help me understand that? So after you receive an answer, just validate what you've heard and then add that, can you help me understand that? Yeah, so those are the ones that came up in our group.
Those are good questions. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody, before we turn it back to Leanne for a big reveal of a great resource that you will be able to download, does anybody have any further comments, questions? Okay, I'll again, oh, so, yeah, go ahead, Ginger.
Sorry. So for coaching questions, it's when you're working with somebody one-on-one oftentimes, but in a group setting, you are limited with time. And actually, I was always time challenged when we did our course in the spring. I always found like I felt like there wasn't enough time, like in 90 minutes. That's my personal experience. So I guess we have to be kind of mindful of time when we're working with somebody, I guess, as well. So it's kind of a balance. It's just a comment.
It is yeah, no, it is a balance. And that's where Leanne and our phrase, just one more question, is good, because it stops it, right? Like you, but it means being really thoughtful in a couple of questions that you would have in a group setting. And is opportunity, I know with our ZOE for Men group, in the breakout groups in particular at the end, we would say, hey, if you want to linger and ask a little more, like we're happy to do that. And or if you're in a live facilitator setting, you can do that where you can say, hey, I heard you say this. What was underneath that? Or tell me a little bit more about that. Like you can do that, and it's probably easier. It's easier to do in a live setting. And thanks, Tiff. Yeah, that's where the chat functions are really helpful. You can spark some of those conversations. Okay, Mrs. McAllister, back to you.
Let's not forget, the Holy Spirit empowers us to do this, right? Like it's not about us, like being awesome with our questions and like just hitting it right and being that professional coach or whatever. There have been times in my life where I haven't known what to do, and Holy Spirit will just drop something in my heart and I say it and it opens everything up. And that has nothing to do with me and all to do with him. So as leadership, we started 21 days of prayer yesterday for ZOE and for our courses and stuff. And that was our focus today. Lord, help our facilitators to be empowered by your spirit to do this work. So anyway, trust him. Okay, well, we are almost done, but there was a couple more things I wanted to say. If you are considering leading your first group this fall, message me. Even in the chat here, because I am going to do a coaching group. By coaching group, I mean we're going to meet 3 times over the fall just to help. My granddaughter was calling me and I just said no. So I'm thinking of meeting 3 times. Once before these groups begin, once midway, and third as a wrap up. I know Michelle is really interested in joining. I think